What if I told you that everything you've been taught about enlightenment is precisely what's keeping you from it? You see, we've been conditioned to view enlightenment as some distant summit, a state achieved only after decades of meditation, study, and spiritual discipline. But here's the thing: enlightenment isn't something you attain, it's the recognition of what already is. Think about it. The very search creates the seeker, who then becomes separated from that which is sought. The greatest cosmic joke is that you've been looking desperately for what you already are. The secret they never told you about enlightenment isn't a secret at all. It's hidden in plain sight, waiting for you to stop seeking. We've been on this spiritual journey together, haven't we? Buying the books, attending the retreats, practicing the disciplines. All of us searching, striving, reaching for that elusive state of perfect awareness. But have you ever wondered why it feels like you're chasing your own shadow? Have you considered that perhaps the very act of seeking enlightenment guarantees you'll never find it? Our minds are magnificent tools for certain tasks, but they become our greatest obstacles on the spiritual path. The intellect can understand the concept of enlightenment, but understanding becomes a barrier. Understanding is not experiencing. Understanding is not being. Understanding is not living. The mind creates a blueprint of enlightenment and then mistakes the blueprint for the building. I once knew a man who spent 40 years searching for enlightenment. He traveled to India, Japan, Thailand. He studied with masters, lived in monasteries, fasted in caves. His bookshelf groaned with spiritual texts. His body bore the marks of disciplined practice. Yet one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, while washing dishes in his kitchen, he began laughing uncontrollably. The soap bubbles, the running water, the simple act of cleaning. He suddenly realized he'd been standing in the ocean while dying of thirst. All his searching had blinded him to what was always there. You see, enlightenment is like the sun. It's always shining, always present. But we've become so fixated on the idea of the sun that we fail to feel its warmth on our skin. We've theorized about light so extensively that we've forgotten how to simply see. Think about it. The greatest obstacle to enlightenment is the belief that you are not enlightened. This belief creates the seeker. The seeker reinforces separation. The separation obscures reality. There are 3 fundamental misunderstandings about enlightenment that keep us trapped in seeking. 3 misconceptions that turn the spiritual journey into an endless hamster wheel. 3 illusions that transform the immediate into the distant. These misunderstandings aren't trivial. They form the foundation of nearly every spiritual teaching, practice, and tradition in our modern world. And in exploring them, we might just discover why enlightenment has seemed so elusive for so long. Now, the first misunderstanding about enlightenment is that it exists in the future. We have created this strange illusion that spiritual awakening is something we must work toward, something we will eventually achieve after sufficient effort, discipline, and time. This misplaced temporality keeps us perpetually striving, perpetually preparing, perpetually postponing. We live as if reality exists somewhere else, sometime later. Not here, not now. We are like people standing at the ocean shore dying of thirst, planning elaborate strategies to find water tomorrow. We are always preparing for life, but never actually living it. I once met a spiritual seeker in Japan who had spent 30 years perfecting his meditation technique. Each day, he would practice diligently, believing that one day his efforts would culminate in the perfect enlightenment experience. One morning, his teacher asked him, "When will you stop rehearsing for life and simply live?" The student was stunned into silence. He suddenly realized that his entire practice had become a sophisticated form of postponement, a way of telling himself that this moment was merely preparation for some better, more spiritual, future moment. You see, the present moment is the only reality we ever have. The future never arrives as the future. It always arrives as the present. If enlightenment is not available now, it will never be available. But here's the thing about the second misunderstanding. We believe enlightenment is a special state different from ordinary experience. We imagine it as some exotic condition marked by perpetual bliss, supernatural abilities, or continuous ecstasy. This keeps us looking past the ordinary, devaluing our everyday experience as somehow spiritually insufficient. Imagine two people drinking tea. The unenlightened person and the enlightened person. What is the difference? The unenlightened person is drinking tea while thinking about enlightenment. The enlightened person is just drinking tea. We have been conditioned to seek the extraordinary while missing the miracle of ordinary existence. We are like fish swimming desperately in search of water, attending water-seeking seminars, reading books about the theoretical properties of water, all while swimming in the very substance they seek. Think about it. The taste of tea, the sound of rain, the sensation of breathing. These ordinary experiences contain the entirety of reality, if we would only stop looking past them for something more spiritual, more special. I knew a woman who spent thousands of dollars traveling to sacred sites around the world, seeking spiritual experiences. She meditated in caves in India, participated in ceremonies in Peru, chanted with monks in Tibet. Yet her awakening occurred while washing dishes in her kitchen, when she suddenly experienced the simple sensation of warm water on her hands as infinitely precious and complete. The ordinary contains the extraordinary. The sacred hides in plain sight within the mundane. When we truly see the ordinary, we discover it was extraordinary all along. This simple seeing, without grasping for something more or different, is the heart of enlightenment. Let me tell you something about this second misunderstanding. We've created entire industries around the pursuit of special spiritual experiences. We've turned enlightenment into a commodity, a product to be purchased, a state to be achieved through the right technique or teacher or retreat. But the truly revolutionary insight of the great wisdom traditions is that reality is already complete, already perfect, already enough. The problem isn't that we need to have a special experience. The problem is that we're not fully experiencing what we already have. We're not awake to the miracle of ordinary existence. We're sleepwalking through life while dreaming of awakening. Have you noticed how we create hierarchies in spirituality? We place certain experiences above others. Meditation above dishwashing. Retreats above daily life. Extraordinary states above ordinary awareness. And in doing so, we fragment reality into spiritual and not spiritual, sacred and profane, special and ordinary. But reality admits no such divisions. It is one seamless whole, with no higher or lower realms. The great Zen masters understood this perfectly. When asked what enlightenment was like, one replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." This answer seems almost insulting to our spiritual ambitions. Surely enlightenment must be more special than that. But in its very ordinariness lies its profundity. But here's the thing about the third and most profound misunderstanding. We believe there is someone who becomes enlightened. This is the most persistent illusion, the most challenging misconception to overcome. We imagine ourselves as separate entities on a spiritual journey toward an enlightened state. But who exactly is this self that seeks enlightenment? Who is this seeker? When we look closely, really closely, at this separate self, it becomes remarkably elusive. It cannot be found. The seeker is precisely what prevents the finding. The one who searches for enlightenment is the very illusion that enlightenment dispels. We are like the sun searching for the sun. We are like the ocean searching for water. We are like eyes trying to see themselves. We are what we seek. I knew a Zen student who approached his master after 10 years of dedicated practice. "Master," he said, "I have meditated diligently, studied the sutras, followed the precepts. What more can I do to become enlightened?" The master asked, "Show me this self that wants to become enlightened." The student fell silent. For the first time, he looked for the seeker rather than the sought, and in that looking, he discovered there was no separate self to become enlightened. There was only awareness itself, already complete, already perfect. The fish cannot find water because it has never been separate from water. In the same way, you cannot find awareness because you are awareness itself. You cannot become what you already are. Think about it. Who is it that wants enlightenment? Who is the experiencer of your experience? When you look for this self, this center, this experiencer, what do you actually find? Not a thing, not an entity, but an openness, an awareness in which all experiences arise. Our sense of being a separate self is constructed through identification with certain aspects of experience. We say, "This is me, and this is not me. This is mine, and this is not mine." Through this constant process of claiming and rejecting, we create the illusion of a separate self. But awareness itself makes no such distinctions. It embraces all experiences equally, without preference or rejection. It is not located anywhere. It has no boundaries. It is not a thing among other things. It is the open space in which all things appear. You see, the separate self is not an entity, but an activity. It's something we do, not something we are. And enlightenment is simply the recognition of what we are prior to this activity of separation. I once visited a monastery in Thailand, where the abbot said something that stunned me with its simplicity. He said, "Enlightenment is not about becoming a better somebody. It's about becoming nobody." Not in the sense of self-annihilation, but in the sense of recognizing that our true nature has never been a separate somebody to begin with. When we integrate these three misunderstandings, we begin to see the complete picture. Enlightenment is not something you attain in the future. It is not a special state different from ordinary experience, and there is no separate self who achieves it. So what is enlightenment? It is not something you do, but a recognition of what you stop doing. It is the falling away of the illusion of separation. It is waking up from the dream of being a separate self on a spiritual journey. Consider this. What if your sense of being a separate self searching for connection is the only barrier to the connection you seek? What if the spiritual search itself is the final obstacle? This recognition is both utterly simple and profoundly transformative. Not because it gives you anything new, but because it reveals what was always true beneath the layers of seeking, striving, and becoming. The fish does not need to find water. It needs only to recognize its true nature as inseparable from water. In the same way, you do not need to find enlightenment. You need only to recognize your true nature as awareness itself, already complete, already perfect. Now, I'm not saying that spiritual practices have no value. They can be tremendously helpful in clearing away the conditioned patterns that reinforce our sense of separation. Meditation, inquiry, contemplation, these can all serve to loosen the grip of illusion. But they are not the cause of enlightenment. They simply remove the obstacles to recognizing what is already the case. It's like clearing away clouds to reveal the sun. The clearing doesn't create the sun. It simply removes what was obscuring our view of it. In the same way, spiritual practices don't create enlightenment. They simply clear away the misunderstandings that obscure our recognition of it. The tragedy of much spiritual seeking is that it often reinforces the very illusion it aims to dissolve. It strengthens our sense of being a separate seeker on a spiritual journey toward a future goal. And in doing so, it takes us further from the recognition that is always available here and now. So we return to where we began. Everything you have been taught about enlightenment is precisely what keeps you from it. But now perhaps you understand this statement differently. The search for enlightenment presupposes its absence. It reinforces the very separation it seeks to overcome. It mistakes the blueprint for the building, the menu for the meal, the pointing finger for the moon. Enlightenment is not the attainment of anything new, but the recognition of what always was. It is not adding something to yourself, but rather removing the illusion that something was missing. It is not becoming anything, but unbecoming everything that was false. I once encountered an elderly woman in a small village who was considered by locals to be a sage. When I asked about her spiritual practices, she laughed gently and said, "I have no spiritual practices. I simply stopped pretending I was separate from life. I stopped believing my thoughts about reality and started noticing reality itself. Everything else followed naturally." Her simple words contained profound wisdom. When we stop reinforcing the illusion of separation, reality reveals itself as it always was. No attainment, no achievement, no becoming, just recognition. So how do we approach this non-attainment? Not by adding new spiritual techniques, but by noticing what we are already doing to maintain the illusion of separation. Notice how we resist this moment by wanting another. Notice how we fragment reality with our judgments about what should be. Notice how we create the illusion of a separate self by identifying with certain experiences and rejecting others. Enlightenment is like relaxing a fist you never realized you were clenching. It is effortless, but only after you exhaust all efforts. It is simple, but only after you move through complexity. It is obvious, but only after you question everything. The sun shines equally on all things. It does not withhold its light from any creature or object. In the same way, awareness illuminates all experiences without preference or judgment. This is your true nature, always present, always available. You see, our spiritual traditions are full of paradoxes because they're trying to point to what cannot be captured in concepts. They tell us to seek what cannot be found through seeking. They instruct us to attain what cannot be attained. They urge us to become what we already are. These paradoxes aren't contradictions or failures of logic. They're invitations to move beyond conceptual understanding to direct recognition. They're fingers pointing to the moon, never to be confused with the moon itself. Let me tell you a story. There was once a fish who heard about this mysterious thing called water. All the wise fish spoke of it with reverence. The sacred texts were filled with descriptions of its wonders. So this fish set out on a great journey to find this water. He swam vast distances, consulted many teachers, practiced many techniques. For years he searched, growing increasingly frustrated and exhausted. One day, in despair, he stopped searching, and in that stopping, he suddenly recognized that what he had been searching for had been present in every moment of his journey. He had never, for a single instant, been separate from water. This is our situation. We are awareness seeking awareness. We are consciousness looking for consciousness. We are what we seek. Think about it. In this moment, are you aware? This awareness that knows your experience, that knows these words, that knows your thoughts and feelings, is it not already present? Has it ever been absent? Is it not the one constant in all your experience? This is not about achieving some altered state of consciousness. It's about recognizing the nature of consciousness itself, which is already present. It's not about becoming something other than what you are. It's about recognizing what you've always been beneath the layers of identification and seeking. So let me leave you with this invitation. Instead of seeking enlightenment as something to attain, recognize what is already here. Instead of trying to become someone special, notice who you already are beneath all becoming. Instead of collecting spiritual experiences, open to the fullness of this ordinary moment. The secret they never told you about enlightenment is that there is no secret. There is no gate to pass through, no threshold to cross, no state to achieve. There is only the recognition of what always was. Like a wave realizing it is water, you are what you seek. You are the ocean in a drop.